Good afternoon. It's 2 or 3 days after Memorial Day, around the 30th of May, I guess. And I just wanted to make a short video and talk to you once again about a variety that I would really like more of you to try out. Those of you that are more interested now in in-ground growing. We love our container figs. I certainly do. And I certainly love experimenting with varieties. Most of us do. But I always try to remember some of the mainstay figs, some of the time-proven fig varieties that have been around for over 50 years. Some of them 75 years. And have proven to be successful year after year. This particular variety is Peter's Honey. And I've talked about this variety many times. And it's a beautiful specimen. And it's been here for, I think this is the 27th year. 27 years ago, I planted this tree along with several others here on the property. This is my Virginia property. And you can look at that. I'll put my hand in this. Look at the size of that trunk where I cut it down before. I mean, it's a foot diameter at least, no exaggeration. And this tree at one time towered over the building. Not just once, several times. And I've had to cut it down to bring it under control. It is such a vigorous variety. And we talked about in the past other varieties, other honey fig varieties like Champagne. And I can tell you, I love Champagne. LSU Champagne, great fig. I've got a video or two about it. And I recommend it. But I want to tell you that Peter's Honey is truly, I think, personally, for what it's worth, and I always add that caveat, I think it's a better variety. And let me tell you why. Here's the reason why. You see those Breba? Peter's Honey is loaded with Breba every year. And when you're dying for a fresh, homegrown, in-ground fig all winter long, the Breba, especially those varieties that produce very good tasting Breba, and not many do. There's not a big list of delicious Breba on particular varieties, but there's a few varieties that have delicious tasting Breba, and this is one of those varieties. And there's an abundance. And Champagne doesn't have that. You might get one or two, but you're not going to get anything near the number of Breba that Peter's Honey produces. Just look at them. And these figs get ripe early. They're early ripening. We're talking around the 4th of July. So during the warmest part of the summer, the driest part of the summer, the hottest part of the summer, when fig variety or fig quality is at its peak, that's when your Breba get ripe. And I can tell you this too. I've tasted a lot of Breba, and I've had a lot of fig varieties over the years. I can tell you that Peter's Honey, its Breba are probably even better tasting than the main crop fig. They're delicious, and they're big. They're large. When these swell up, they're huge. Now, don't get me wrong. The main crop figs are sublime. They're exquisitely delicious. the Breba are as good as the main crop fig, and I think a little better. So these are bonuses, big bonuses. And these are reasons why I would like to try and convince some of you that want to try in-ground growing and not always be confined to, say, containers. I would like to convince you to give this one a try, because I've had this tree many, many years, and it's been sold by nurseries for decades. And there's a reason for that, because it's a very successful cultivar. I'd like you to give it a try. Look at this tree. Now it's not even June yet. Look, just take a look at this tree. Look at it. You can't hold this tree back. It's just loaded with fruit. And wait, well, you've seen my other videos. You can see the main crop figs are already forming. You see them? You can see them forming. And here, we're take a look at these here. See those little babies right there? There's the main crop fig forming already. And what an abundance. What an abundance of fruit. This tree will produce as many as 20, 30 trees in pots. Hundreds, and I'm not exaggerating, hundreds of figs. So Peter's Honey, for a lot of reasons, I highly recommend it. We're not going to talk a lot about varieties. I wanted to show you another mainstay variety, another time-proven variety, which I think kind of adds to the reason why I'm making this video, which is essentially, you know, you can have your figs and eat them too. You can have other varieties, you can experiment with exotic varieties, and that's fun. But don't overlook some of these time-proven varieties that are magnificent and will produce an abundance of figs for you that you can rely on, depend on every single year for years. Now I'm in zone B right here, 7B, but I've grown Peter's Honey, and you'll see my other videos in 7A as well. And it's just as successful in 7A. Very winter hardy, by the way. I should have added that. It's extremely winter hardy. Peter's Honey, a wonderful fig. Very, 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 very winter hardy. It's superior. It's a superior cultivar, disease resistant, nematode resistant. I can't think of one bad thing to say about it. It's just a great fig. This is a little Ronde Bordeaux, which I love. Ronde Bordeaux. I planted in ground the last year, and it made it through the winter very nicely. And it has no damage at all. It's good. It's going to take a little while for it to prosper, and it will get vigorous. I'm sure of it. I can tell. I love Ronde Bordeaux, and we'll talk real quickly. I showed this before too. This made it through 2 winters. This is a sultane, and it's uninjured in 7B. And the soil is not real rich here. It's sandy, but it's going to be a very successful cultivar, and I talked about it before. This is a Celeste tree that I planted not long ago, just a few days ago, and this comes from one of my videos. If you see the video about the Chincoteague Celeste tree, it's a local, actually it's a community tree that has been there for, I don't know, 25 years that I can remember. And everybody goes and picks the fruit, and there's so much fruit on it. But I made a video out of it, which is in my collection. And I took cuttings last year, and I love this tree so much because I do think it's a variant. And other people with experience that have been here, that have seen this variety, they agree that it's some kind of a Celeste variant. So I wanted to put it in my yard here so that I'd have my own tree. And so I took cuttings last year and I grew them, and I gave some to my close friends. And now this one, and I'm not going to talk very long about this. This is, I call it strawberry verte, and I don't know exactly what it is, but it's an Adriatic that my uncle my Uncle Mario brought from Taranto, Italy about, oh God, 65, 70 years ago. No, longer than that, I'm sorry, almost 80 years ago. And he only brought back 2 varieties, and this is one of them. I'll show you another one in a minute. But it's an Adriatic type, green on the outside, very, very crimson, beautiful red on the inside, and absolutely tangy, delicious. I love this variety, and I've kept this variety for over a half a century. I preserved it, and the story goes back a long way about this fig, and one of these days I'll probably tell it. It's an interesting story about my Uncle Mario. The 2 of us were fig fanatics. I love my Uncle Mario tremendously. Anybody that's in the family that's listening to this video knows exactly what I'm talking about. I'll move on quickly. Now, this is my XL. I also videoed this last year, and it's a magnificent variety. It's a iracondite variety. It's one of the first humanly engineered crosses, successful crosses, and this one's named XL. It's been around for 60 some years, and those of you that know about iracondite, he was probably one of the greatest fig experts that this country has ever had. He made a lot of contributions to our world, those of us that are fig enthusiasts. And this particular variety came out of his experimental crosses. And you can see that this doesn't, see, here's a Breba. And is there another one? Here's one. Okay, that's all. It doesn't have the Breba like Peter's honey. A whole crop of Breba, delicious Breba that will get ripe at the prime time of summer, right near the summer solstice, when it's when figs are at their very, very, very best, their exquisite best. You don't get many Breba on this tree, but it has a nice main crop tree, fig production, and they are very, very delicious. It's also a honey fig, not as exquisitely delicious as Peter's honey, but this tree has been here an equal number of years. I planted this tree the same time I planted my Peters, and look at it. Now I've cut it down a lot. Of course, I've cut all my trees down because I had to. But if I can do it, you can do it. You can grow these trees in ground. And in 7A, they need a little protection, and we've talked about that. Here in 7B, they don't. They don't need protection, which is a big advantage from the standpoint of not having to expend as much effort. This is of course, this one here is, you can probably recognize it. This is hardy Chicago, and it's been here the same length of time. I've had to cut it back many, many times. It's hard. Oh, here comes the air conditioner. Here you can see that I've cut it back when it was quite large many, many times. And hardy Chicago is a great variety. Very quickly, this is a variety that the other variety is a San Pedro type that my uncle brought from Taranto, Italy. And I want to talk about this variety, but we don't have time today. It's the only other San Pedro type variety that I would recommend, that I've ever grown, okay, in my limited experience. Someone else out there might have grown a better one. Here's some Celeste trees. They're making a lot of fruit. They're not real big, but I have to always cut my trees back. But this will make an abundance of Celeste. It's a local tree too. Now here's a tree that I wanted to talk about, and we'll talk about some others. But very quickly, this was the other reason why I wanted to make a video today. For your benefit, I wanted to show you this magnificent tree. And look at the figs on this tree. Please, look at this. This is a San Pedro type, which those of you that are familiar with it know that only the first crop ripens, because this tree needs caprification by the fig wasp for the main crop to get ripe. But some people would just more or less dismiss this tree and say, well, we really don't want to grow that then, because it doesn't have a main crop that gets ripe in our region of the country. But I can tell you, it is worth growing this variety, Desert King. It is more than worth growing. For all the reasons I just told you about the Breba on Peter's honey, well, this tree has a tremendous abundance of Breba that will all get ripe right around the 4th of July. Some a few days before the 4th of July, maybe 5 or 6 days, and during the 4th of July, and some a few days after the 4th of July. And then they're done. But what an abundance of delicious, absolutely fantastic, huge, when these swell, they're gigantic, large figs. Look at these figs. Now I can tell you that Desert King is a tree that is worth growing. But I don't need to tell you that, because you can see it yourself. The abundance of figs on this tree. Every single year you can rely on them. Disease resistant. They don't crack. They get ripe at the hottest part of the summer. When you want to taste them, look at all these figs. Look at them. When you're dying to have a fig and you're waiting for your main crop figs, which are still going to be a month away, well, you're going to get a whole big harvest of these delicious figs, these Breba, from this San Pedro type fig, which you can see is an absolute, total, complete success. Who would not want to have a tree like this in their yard, growing in the ground, producing delicious figs, the types of figs in terms of their quality that you can only really truly get from in-ground, because in-ground is best, let's face it. There's a few varieties that taste really good in pots, but they don't taste as good as their counterparts in the ground. They just don't. And there's a lot of varieties that don't taste very good in pots at all. Peter's honey is one of them. I don't like it in pots. Me personally, that's my personal opinion for what it's worth. This tree in pots, Peter and Desert King, no good. Don't like it. In the ground, it is superb. So I would not discount this fig. I wouldn't rule it out if I were you. I would try to encourage you to grow this variety. It's the other reason why I'm making this video. I want you to see it yourself for your benefit. Once again, for what it's worth, I honestly want you to try this out. If I can do it, you can do it. These figs are superb. They're large and they're delicious. It's a honeyberry fig, if you want to categorize it that way. But it is a superior fig of exquisite taste that gets ripe at the perfect time of the year, when the main crop figs are nowhere near getting ready to ripen. So, with that, I don't really have too much more to say. I have some minnows. I want to catch. The tide is low now, and I'm going to be doing some flounder fishing tomorrow that I'm looking forward to. I planted a few other varieties which I don't have time to talk about. This I want to talk about sometime. I've given this, it's a very hard variety to propagate. I only was successful last year with 2, and I tried quite a few of them. It's a long story. It goes back to my dad, who was born in Italy. It's a long story about that fig, but he didn't bring that one from Italy. I bought it for him, about 22 or 3 years ago as a Father's Day gift. It turned out being some kind of an experimental fig tree that I don't know the name of, really. And that experimental fig tree was a Celeste type fig, which my father grew next to his garage without protection in 7A for 15 or more years. And then that tree became famous, not only in the neighborhood, but people used to drive from far away to come to that tree. It produced so many figs. It was incredible. And I'll tell that whole story someday, because it's a very interesting story. But thank you for visiting. I'm excited about 2020. It is the end of May. It won't be long. It's hard to believe, really, that it won't be long until the 4th of July. Just about a month away. So summer's going to pass quickly this year, I think. My wife and I have been locked down because of the virus for almost 10 weeks. We volunteered to lock ourselves down even before the governor declared the lockdown in New Jersey. And this is our first trip here. And so we were very excited about coming down and getting started for the summer and taking a look at the fig trees, and checking on their progress, planting a few new varieties, and everything's working out well. Thank you for your visit. Please give these trees a try if you want to try some in-ground growing. Remember, it is true. You can have your figs and eat them too. It's fun to experiment with some of the exotic varieties. I do. Many people do. But let's not forget some of these very reliable, very dependable varieties that have been around and have proven themselves for many, many, many decades. Good day.